Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to our second edition of Breaking News for this Wednesday, the 7th day of May, 2025. And let me tell you, things are getting really strange out there with respect to the U.S., Israel, and what's going on in the Middle East. We're going to have some stories that are somewhat confusing, and one of them maybe even fake news. So we'll get to it in a minute. First of all, let's look at it. More fallout from Israel with the U.S. agreement with the Houthis. This is from Virtual Jerusalem. They're very angry at Donald Trump there, but not only in Jerusalem. It's interesting in Israel. There's some of the U.S. senators that don't like what Trump did with his agree with the Houthis. In fact, as we're going to read, there was one defense minister from an unnamed country who called Peter Hegseth up and yelled at him, the defense secretary, of this agreement that Trump made. So we'll talk about that. But then we have this story. This is from the Jerusalem Post. A U.S. official supposedly said if Israel doesn't wake up, the U.S. will advance the Saudi deal without it. It's a very interesting article. It sounds like fake news. If you want to look at the Jerusalem Post, I suggest you do read it. It's a leftist, you know, organization there, like most of the Israeli ones are, but it's usually supposedly pretty accurate. But let me tell you, they have something like the last check, almost 300 comments about what supposedly Donald Trump said, what supposedly this unnamed source representing Trump said. And it's not very pretty. So we'll get to that in a minute. And then we've got the other stories. The Houthi, and this is funny. The Houthis launched a missile towards Iran, towards Israel from Yemen that fell over Saudi Arabia. In other words, it didn't travel very far, which is hilarious. In fact, our friend Nodder just sent me a meme. We've got the trouble. We'll be talking about this between Pakistan and India. They both are nuclear powers, by the way. They're fighting back and forth. There's a lot of worrisome things there. And he sent me a meme that said Pakistan sends missile to India, causing regional fears, and it showed one of these fake blow up, about 20-foot high missiles and balloon things that goes in the air. It was funny, by the way, but the situation there is not funny, unfortunately, because of what's going on with Pakistan, both their nuclear powers and India. We trust that the hatred that's there has always been there will not boil over even worse than it is. We got that story. Then we have this. Iran basically requested direct negotiation with the U.S. Now, this from YNET, that means they're hurting. Remember before they said, well, we may negotiate, but only be indirect. Now they are insisting on direct negotiations with the U.S. because they're in a world of hurt. They're in a lot of trouble with what happened with the Houthis. Like we said, all its surrogates are gone down the drain, and they're on their own. Their port over $3 billion worth of damage there in their container port and that, which they cannot rebuild. And so China is, calling on them, and they're calling on China too. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens between the U.S. and Iran. Then finally, we have this story. The first ballot to choose a new pope has been completed without a resolution. The black smoke came out of at the Vatican, so no pope is elected as of yet. This is day one. We didn't expect to see the first round winner here because this is one of these anybody's guess who they're thinking of. When Pope Francis won 13 odd years ago, he only had a 4% chance according to the betting line before the conclave met. And so you never know, somebody out of left field may win. Anyway, we'll keep it apprised of that. That's a huge story. We'll follow it. All right, here's our headlines. More fallout from Israel with U.S. agreement with the Houthis. This is from Virtual Jerusalem. It's kind of piggyback on what we talked earlier today. The unexpected U.S. announcement has created sharp diplomatic friction. Jerusalem officials and analysts say Washington's move reflects an America First calculation, securing U.S. trade routes at odds with Israel's security needs. In Congress, critics of the deal warned Israel must fend for itself. Israel is on its own, defending itself from Iran's proxies, tweeted Senator Lindsey Graham, the Republican from South Carolina, a Trump ally, urging Israeli leaders to do what you have to do to protect your airspace and your people. Graham even suggested strikes against Iran if needed. Israel's government insisted it remains in close coordination with Washington, but the episode underscored concerns about diverging U.S. and Israeli interests. We talked about that earlier today, and we're hearing more stories about it right now. In response to Oval Office questions regarding Israel's security implications stemming from a New Deal, former President, let's say former President, it should be President Donald Trump dismissed the matter as unrelated to the agreement. He says, no, I don't know about that, frankly, but I know one thing. The Houthis, want nothing to do with us, and they've let it be known through all their surrogates and very strongly, he told reporters. Now, the article goes on to say the shift in U.S. policy sent shockwaves through Israeli political circles. Trump's announcement that the U.S. will stop attacking the Houthis is a resounding message to the entire region. Attack Israel, just leave us alone, Americans alone, wrote Israeli political analyst Amit Segal on X. If I were Iranian, that's how I'd interpret it. Now, the timing of the ceasefire, announced while Houthi missiles were being fired at Ben Gurion Airport and the IDF was conducting airstrikes in Yemen, sparked accusations of diplomatic sidelining. Barak Ravid noted in Walla, that's an Israeli uh, periodical, that the deal appeared to have been struck without Jerusalem's knowledge. That seems to be exactly what's gone on, describing it as a sign of extremely serious coordination and trust issues between the Netanyahu government and the Trump administration. A senior Israeli official admitted on Wednesday it was still unclear what the implications would be for Israel. Former U.S. ambassador to Israel, U.S. Ambassador to Israel Dan Shapiro welcomed the reduction in attacks on American vessels, but warned the threat remains if hostilities against Israel and other regional partners persist. No attacks on U.S. ships is good news, Shapiro said, but the wind is modest if attacks on other ships or on Israel continue. In other words, it's sort of unclear. Are these just American ships that won't be attacked by the Houthis? In other words, are the British ships? Other ships fair game? This is the question they're asking. It seems to be unclear, and so he goes on to say, but the wind is modest if attacks on other ships or on Israel continue. A terror organization launching missiles around the region, including to Israel's airport, can't continue, he said. He emphasized that Israeli military operations may need to persist regardless of the U.S. posture. That could very well be the case. They may just say, well, heck with it. We're just going to bomb Iran. And if U.S. keeps going this way, we don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. An Israeli Defense Force confirmed that another close U.S. ally, this is the story I was mentioning, another close U.S. ally involved in the anti-Houthi campaign was also left out of the loop before Trump's declaration. The same source noted that U.S. Secretary of Defense Peter Hegseth received at least one irate call from a foreign defense minister shortly thereafterwards. And we don't know where, maybe the Brits or who knows, Canada, we don't know. Anyway, back in Washington, members of Congress expressed frustration over the lack of conditions in the agreement to halt Houthi attacks against Israel. Clearly, that's a problem, said Senator James Langford, Republican of Oklahoma, referring to the absence of provisions requiring the Houthis to stop targeting Israel. The initial statement was they've got to stop firing at American ships. As much as I know, it's what exactly is printed. But clearly, they shouldn't be able to shoot at us or our allies or any shipping in the area. Additional criticism came from Senators Rick Scott, Lindsey Graham, Tom Tillis, Ted Cruz, Richard Blumenthal, Chris Coons, and Chris Murphy. Now, what's interesting about this, you got both people on the right and on the left that feel the same way. And so, and kudos to them. They're absolutely right. So we'll see what's happening. Now, this next story, this is the one I'm going to read to you. So the Jerusalem Post, in fact, I just saw it right before I started put this together right now to record, and I thought I'd bring it up because it's a Jerusalem Post usually is a pretty reliable, website, and they tell pretty usually reliable stories. Although this one, to a number of people, seems like fake news. I'll let you decide. And like I said, if you want to afterwards, you probably ought to go to the JerusalemPost.com and read the story, but read the comments because it's really interesting what they say. Okay, here's the story. Some U.S. official supposedly said, if Israel doesn't wake up, U.S. will advance the Saudi deal without it. This is a report from the Jerusalem Post has published it. The official said that Trump is growing frustrated with Israel's approach and that he intends to push on with the deal regardless of Israel's position. A senior American official, that's all we know about this character, delivered unusually sharp criticism of Israel's conduct in hostage negotiations and warned that the United States is prepared to finalize a regional agreement with Saudi Arabia, even without Israeli participation. This is from N12. They reported this on Wednesday. According to the report, the remarks were made at a meeting Monday night between the official and the families of hostages that are held by Hamas. According to several people who attended, the U.S. official, he's unnamed, he or she's unnamed, said that Washington is growing increasingly frustrated with Israel's approach to the stalled talks. If until now they paid the price of not ending the war, today the price will be much heavier for Israel and not just the hostages, the official reportedly told participants. No idea what he's talking about. President Trump is determined to move forward with a significant deal with Saudi Arabia, even without Israeli involvement. The ceasefire agreement with the Houthis is just a prelude, and if Israel doesn't come to its senses, even the deal of the millennium will happen without it. I guess this is what's going to happen with the Saudi deal in the U.S., waiting to be announced. The meeting was convened in an effort to break the ongoing deadlock in negotiations for the hostages release. Family members of those still held in Gaza said they were hoping the meeting would lead to increased international pressure on decision makers to advance the talks. The official, whose name was not disclosed, expressed support for the family's position that continued military operations could endanger the hostages' lives, a position that stands in contrast to the current Israeli government policy, which views sustained military pressure as a tool to force concession. The official said the U.S. views its strategic alignment with Saudi Arabia as a priority. Now, again, the fact that this person supposedly said that and represents the Trump administration really brings out some red flags. It can endanger hostages' lives. They're already in danger. Hamas will not make any agreement with them. The only way you're going to get anybody out alive is by doing what Israel is planning to do. Then we have this heading. We hope Israel will board the historic train that has already left the station, the official said, but the U.S. will not wait at the platform. The comments appeared to leave the family shaken, the report noted. Several said afterwards they are alarmed not only by the message itself, but by what they described as a shift in tone from an ally traditionally seen as backing Israel unconditionally. If finalized without Israeli input, the Saudi deal, which the Trump administration has described as a framework for stabilizing the region and curbing Iranian influence, could significantly reshape the diplomatic landscape, sidelining Jerusalem at a critical moment. Okay, so this is what the article is saying. Is it true? I don't know. But again, boy, you had emotions. Those who thought it was true was as mad as can be at Donald Trump. But a lot said, wait a minute, now this just doesn't sound right. This sounds like fake news. Well, we're going to find out fairly soon. But this is, I thought I would bring it to you because this is, put forward, and it was the head story in the Jerusalem Post and as real news. All right, this one here. Houthis launch a missile towards Israel from Yemen that fell over Saudi Arabia. This is the laugh of the day. The IDF identified a missile launched towards Israel from Yemen by Houthi terrorists that fell over Saudi Arabia without being intercepted on Wednesday, according to reports from Israeli media. Now, the Houthis, like we said yesterday when we talked with our friend Nodder, that they are basically been bombed back to the Stone Age. They're like in a wheelchair militarily now. What they can do, simply because they have, their assets are old. They like Scud missiles and that. They're basically worthless in fighting, and so they send a missile today. It only gets as far as Saudi Arabia. In other words, that wasn't very far. It wasn't very close to Israel. Is the bottom line with that. And so it shows two things, though. It shows they still want to do something against Israel. Obviously, still want to attack, but number two, they don't seem to have any teeth in their attack. That seems to be the response. So we'll keep an eye on that. Now, here's a story. This last one really is telling us tons of stuff, volumes. Headline 4: Iran requests direct nuclear negotiations with the U.S. This is from YNET. For a first report, amid frustration in Tehran with the Omani mediation, or mad at Oman, the Iranian foreign minister turns to President Donald Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, and asks to conduct direct negotiations. Remember originally when the U.S. Said, we won't talk unless less direct, and the Iranians said, no, it's going to be indirect. We're going to have the Omani representative, that's going to go to you, talk to you. You're going to talk to him. He's going to talk to us. We talk to him. He goes back to you. One of those things. So this guy's just running back and forth. Well, now, no, they want direct talks. After three sessions of indirect talks, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi approached President Donald Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff and requested to conduct direct negotiation with the United States on nuclear issues, YNET has learned. The move comes against the backdrop of Tehran's disappointment with Omani mediation and its desire to hold direct talks with the U.S. However, if direct negotiations are ultimately not agreed upon, the option of Norwegian mediation is being considered. According to reports on Tuesday, the fourth round of talks between Iran and the United States is expected to take place over the weekend, likely in Muscat, the capital of Oman. Iranian state media reported that talks may resume as early as Saturday. Iranian source close to the negotiating team told Reuters that the date has not yet been finalized and that the talks are expected to take place over 2 days in Muscat, either Saturday and Sunday or Sunday and Monday. The fourth round of talks was originally planned to take place in Rome last Saturday, but was postponed, reportedly due to logistical reasons, according to officials in Oman. Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer, this is from Israel, currently in Washington for meetings, including one with Witkoff, Trump's envoy who is leading the engagement with Iran. Witkoff also stated that Washington is working to hold the upcoming rounds of talks this weekend, a day after Iran's foreign ministry reaffirmed Tehran's commitment to diplomacy with the U.S. Now, this next paragraph is fascinating. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke on Tuesday with Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian about the progress of the talks between Washington and Tehran. And according to the Kremlin, Putin said that Russia is prepared to facilitate dialogue between Iran and the United States in order to reach a fair agreement. Now, isn't that interesting? Overnight, Trump addressed the Iran issue. It's what he said before. We want Iran to be a successful country. We don't want anything that blocks that path, but we cannot let them have nuclear weapons, he said. He warned again, if they choose to go a different path, it'll be a very sad thing. It's something we don't want to do, but we will have no choice. They're not going to have nuclear weapons. They're not going to have nuclear weapons. Do you understand me? Again, at least he's saying the same thing there. He added, we're talking with them about many things right now. This is a really decisive time. I mean, it certainly is. I would say for Iran and their country, it's a very important time for Iran. This is the most important time in Iran's history, and I hope they'll do the right thing. I'd love to see a peace deal, a strong one. They can't have nuclear weapons, but I'd say this is the most important period in Iran's long history, and we want it to be a prosperous country. And this follows his Tuesday announcement that the U.S. would stop bombing the Iran-aligned Houthis in Yemen, saying the group has agreed to stop attacking U.S. ships. All right, so here we are. What's going to happen next? This is literally anybody's guess, about the same odds of knowing who the next pope is. We have no clue because there's going to be some huge deal, obviously, to reshape the Middle East. Trump's going to do Saudi Arabia. We don't know what exactly they've got in mind. It sounds like something huge, and we'll have that announced very, very soon. It's the deal of the millennium now, this is called. And Israel supposedly is not on board, according to this unnamed source that supposedly talked to the hostages' families the other night in Israel. So we'll see. Again, we've got one thing after another, and at least there's never a dull moment here, but we don't know what to say beyond what's in the news, and we report it to you. And as soon as we know anything concrete, we'll let you know. But we do know this. What we did find out, the Houthis are toothless now. They just won't have much to attack long range to Israel, even to attack some of the maritime ships. We don't know if they're going to still do that. Is the deal, and that's what one commentator said, wait a minute, is the deal just with the U.S. ships? In other words, are the British ships, the other ships going to get it? Japanese, other ships, are they going to be hit by the Houthis? And so we don't know. A lot of unknowns here, a lot of confusion, but we'll soon find out. Okay, I'm Don Stewart. Thanks again for watching. And until next time, till tomorrow morning, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.